Welcome to the Men After God podcast, where you will be challenged and encouraged as you pursue God, achieve success, and raise a thriving family. Join your host, Dustin, and his guests on a weekly journey to grow as husbands, fathers, and men after God. Here is your host, Dustin Alley.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Men After God podcast. It is another week with another amazing guest for you. I cannot wait for you to hear Luke's story and man, what he has been through, what he has overcome, the lessons he's learned that God has showed him, how he has seen God provide through tragedy and difficulty, and is now on the other side ready to invest in you and anyone else that is looking to get an entrepreneurship and business, or really if you're just trying to go through life and achieve success with a thriving faith and family. And without further ado, Luke, welcome to the podcast, man.
Well, that is a incredibly generous introduction, Dustin, but I am honored to be here. It was awesome to chat with you for just a few minutes there before we actually hit record, just to get to know you. I love the vision and the heart you have for this podcast, this ministry, and I can really see that God's gifted you with leadership, with vision, and I'm really excited to see what He's going to do through not just this episode, this podcast, but again this kind of movement that you've started here. So it's an honor to be a small part of that.
Luke, man, thanks so much. Yeah, we're very excited about what God's going to do. We got a whole team behind us. You know, we were talking about the various things going on, and guys, just to update you, we've got a team of about 10 guys that work behind the scenes on the Men After God movement, takes care of the podcast, our Facebook community at facebook.com/groups/Men After God, and then also developing our coaching program. We've got a few coaches on board for that. And then we've got a conference coming up where we've got a conference we've been invited to coming up. We've got one in New York. We've got one in St. Louis next year. And then Men After God at some point will have its very own conference. So we're looking forward to putting all that together, and glad to have you a part of it, man, because your story, I'm moved even just hearing you share it, because you've got a story that many of us either have, could have, and honestly, I mean, as you would say, probably want to avoid. And that's why Men After God's here, is to help either, heal after or, prevent it from taking place. But, well, I don't want to talk about it. I want you to talk about it. So let's hear from it, Luke. Tell us first off, let's talk about your family. Right now, you've got your daughter. What's her name?
My daughter, her name is Brooklyn. She turned 6 just back in June. And she, at the time of recording this, she's getting ready to start her first day of first grade here next week, actually. And she is, in fact, you probably can't tell because it's blurred out, but all the pictures behind me are of her. Yeah. She is my family. I mean, she is, my daughter is, being a father, Dustin, is so fulfilling. And,
Absolutely.
And it's so, everybody says it, but it's true. Like, you don't know until you have one of your own. And she's wonderful, awesome. And just in fact, tomorrow I'm taking her down to Atlanta, taking her to the Georgia Aquarium. I'm looking forward to that. And so, love my little girl. Being a girl dad is awesome.
Yeah, I've got 2 boys and a girl. Now, I don't know if your daughter's like mine, but at 6 years old, it seems as though she's 6 going on 16 with some of the responses I get. I've already had the hand on the hip, cocked to the side, and head turn at me. And I'm like, what is that? That needs to stop. That can't take place right now. We got to work through it. Right. So you're going to the Georgia Aquarium, but listen, man, you're down there in God's country. For those that are listening, he's over there right in the center of Tennessee, right? A little above Nashville.
Yeah, a little south of Nashville.
South of Nashville.
Well, I would say a small town called Murfreesboro, but it is of the kind of suburbs of Nashville. It's the largest or the second largest. So I've been here since I was 8 years old. So that's 25 years. I can't do great math, but I've been here. I was born in Alabama.
Praise God you left that state. All right.
I didn't leave the football behind, though. Can't do that. There.
Get out of here. Well, it's been a good podcast, Luke. Thanks for talking.
Good. Thanks. It was an honor. So anyways, I'm here in Murfreesboro, just south of Nashville, about half an hour from Nashville. It's perfect distance. I couldn't live in Nashville, but I also couldn't live out in the sticks either. I love my suburb life. So that's where I'm at.
I grew up in Northeast Tennessee, and it's very much
okay.
the more sticks of the area, right? Our
Yeah.
big town was Kingsport, and there was
Yeah,
about 67,000 residents, right? And I definitely realized that lifestyle I don't think was for me. So, up here in Bristol, we got about 60,000 residents, so we live in a town, pretty big town for Connecticut, and so I'm with you, man. I like that in between. I couldn't do New York. I've only been to New York City once, but oh, good Lord, no.
Yeah. No, thanks.
No. And then let's go back to the important matters of life, though. So your daughter, are you training her up right to follow Jesus and be a Tennessee football fan, or are you trying to steer her in a bad direction?
So here's the it's not just me. Now, I will say of my family, I'm not wearing the crimson intentionally. This is
I did notice you had that on. I'm like, oh man,
this is not a subtle nod to that. But yes, I do claim Alabama Crimson Tide is my team. However, my mom is what you would call more diehard. And so for me I don't know what would be worse for my mother would be to train my daughter to abandon the faith or to abandon Alabama football. And so ultimately, I don't know where she's going to land. But hey, but yeah, she's right here. I mean, and she's born and raised here in Tennessee, and
amen. Well,
so she's going to be exposed to a lot of orange.
That's right.
And we'll see. We'll just see how it all pans out.
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, no, you said you're going down to Georgia, and I thought you were going to tell me something about the Georgia Dome, or I'm sorry, not Georgia Dome, but going down to UGA or something. You said the aquarium. I'm like, okay, good. But I think we can all agree Georgia just needs to fall off the face of the map. That'd be all right. We wouldn't be upset about that.
It would help us Crimson Tide fans, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, I just loved that Tennessee when we won last year. Like, what we didn't just win; I mean, we celebrated with such gusto. We tossed it into the Tennessee River there, right? That's what was it, the goalpost. Now, guys, for listening, if you don't follow college football, that was a wonderful game, a hard fought game. And, Tennessee doesn't beat Alabama often. Give credit where credit's due. Alabama's a dynasty.
15 years. First in 15 years. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So it's not like we got this great claim to fame, but we did it. And we did it at least once. And we stormed the field and threw that goalpost in the Tennessee River. Oh, it was glorious. Glorious night.
Yeah. So, enjoy that moment. I think we're out for blood this year.
I hope so. We got our new quarterback in. Guys, this can turn into a sports podcast real quick if we start going to college football. So let me backtrack and come off of this. And so, Luke, talk to us about your journey, man. Like even just because you had your journey started in one direction, going into ministry, and then took a turn, and you're now a business owner of a successful design company, and you've got a lot of great things going there, but overnight success, right? It just took you a few years to get there. And so start that journey off with Bible college. What was that experience like for you, and then how it transitioned out into ministry?
Yeah. So when I was 15 years old, I really did feel a calling towards ministry. And, that word gets thrown around, calling, whatever. Right. I'm not God, so I don't try to figure it out, and I don't want to impose even my experience with that on other people. I had a good friend tell me the other day, God works different with different people, and I really do.
Amen. Oh, amen. And that doesn't, and just because you and I probably heard the same things, like God doesn't change; He's consistent. I am the Lord; I change not. All true statements, but to say He works differently with different people does not negate that at all. And I love that you brought that up. Thanks, man.
So that was for me. It was an experience where I felt God calling me to ministry, to preach, to teach. And so being at the church I was at, they kind of had a pipeline for that. They said, okay, if that's what you want to do, awesome. We want to support you in that. And so, they started my youth pastor, they did a good job of mentoring me even there in high school. And they led me to go to a Bible college, West Coast Baptist College, but at the time, 12 years ago, was the probably premier Bible college in my world. And in the denomination and the kind of movement that I was in there. And so I went there, and what I believe was really kind of the prime of what they had going on. I spent a few years there, met a girl, married her the summer after I graduated there in 2012. And then I got to fulfill my dream. My dream had been to work at my home church. And I got to live my dream, and I thought that was it. I thought I've reached it. I'm only 20. I was 21 years old at the time, and I have reached it already. I'm already here.
Yeah, you made it.
I made it. Good. So done. Check it off the list. Life is good. And I got into that, and that, it was a large church running anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200. And they also had a pretty large Christian school, which was running about 400 or 500. And so they hired my wife to work in the Christian school as a teacher. They hired me to do both. They said, you're going to teach half the day, and you're going to do media and marketing, and even some like IT, which I was able to get out of that pretty quickly because that was not my thing. They think everybody thinks it's all the same, but it's not.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, you like computers? You can do sound and tech too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you have a Mac, so you can do everything. And so I had kind of half the day, or really wound up being less than half the day, to do everything else, like run the full media department. It was a one-man show, just me, for this huge ministry, website, graphic design, video production, marketing, promotional efforts, anything and everything creative marketing media ran through my office of just me. And so to not get into all the weeds of it, because again, I spent about 4 years there, my problem was saying no. The church was not, I do want to say this, Dustin, because I hear a lot of people that have an experience like mine, and they want to blame the church, or they want to blame the denomination as a whole. Or they want to blame the pastor. And I'm not saying that there aren't situations where it's maybe abusive, where they are inconsiderate of your time and inconsiderate of your family and so forth. And they are seemingly pretty selfish. They say, hey, we just want you to serve us, forget everything else. I can honestly say that was not the case with this church. Again, this is my home church. I had a good relationship with the pastor and everything. The problem is that at the time, this was kind of new to them, all this media stuff, doing more with it. They'd really kind of, like a lot of churches, they just were kind of late to the game in that. And I was bringing them up to speed. And so they didn't understand the amount of effort, time, energy, resource it took to really do it right. Really, right. I didn't either. I was kind of learning on the job. Yeah. And my problem was that I just didn't know how to create effective boundaries. I didn't know when to say no. And in fact, I got this sick addiction to feeling needed, feeling like I was important. And so I wanted to say yes. And that just to kind of feed the ego. And so, it got to a point there where, like, I remember my first year primarily, I would work all day doing the media stuff while I was on the church property. And then all night, when I went home, I would have my laptop and I would work on getting ready for my classes the next day. I kid you not. I probably went to bed before 1 a.m. That first year in particular, maybe twice. Wow. It was just, and again, this was all just me trying to prove myself. Yeah. So like I said, fast forwarding a little bit, I reached a situation where, where ultimately it was creating problems in my family, in my marriage, in my personal life. And because, I had just prioritized the church and my work there above everything else. I hate to admit it, but that's, I've come to terms to admit that to myself. That's where I was. And so it got to my wife, and my wife just basically said, I can't do this anymore. And it affected her in negative ways. And ultimately what wound up happening was, we got divorced. And actually, and I didn't go into all the details in our interview conversation here, but we actually got divorced twice. We divorced once, signed papers once, and then we did have a season of reconciliation. And that was after I left the ministry and everything. And then, but for whatever reason, that reconciliation just didn't stick. And ultimately it's just, cause I still, even though I wasn't in a full-time ministry setting, that was still where my heart was. And ultimately for her, it just became something she didn't want to be a part of that life anymore. And so, we'd had a daughter by that time, but she decided that she would just rather not be married anymore. To put it quite as kind of plainly as possible. And so, so she moved out, we, got divorced, and that's where we're at now. And, just I always like to clarify, mistakes were made. I'm not here to, people could say, I can say, if you want to get biblical and theological about it, I guess I did have biblical grounds for the divorce and everything. But all that said, we have a good co-parenting relationship and arrangement. And even in that, I feel blessed because I see a lot of people who go through what I've been through. I know people and they have to deal with so much drama, so much craziness. And for me, she chose to actually move into the city of Nashville. So that is about half an hour away. So for me, it involves me taking a trip to Nashville a couple times a week to exchange my daughter. And at most, I always like to say it's a mild inconvenience. Yes. And even, again, God is kind of blessed in just keeping that as a healthy arrangement and everything. And so as far as my personal and marriage and relationship side of things, that is what ultimately resulted from just kind of that initial not being able to set boundaries and things. That's kind of, those were, again, we can talk about who made mistakes and whatever, but I've always heard it said, I have to take 100% ownership of my faults and failures. And I know what those are.
And what you're doing there, that personal ownership, like that's huge. Like we can't move forward until we own what we did, because if we continue to blame everyone else for our problems and stuff, well, nothing's going to change until they change. And I'm sure you figured it out, and I have too. Most people don't change. And so we're the ones that have to take the ownership and make the adjustments and move forward. I want to talk to our audience for just a minute. Guys, listen up. And I always do this whenever we have someone talk about ministry, because I want to make sure that any of our business owners, entrepreneurs, guys that are in corporate America, I want you to hear the heart of Luke right now. It wasn't just ministry, right? It wasn't church. Like that's his story. Your story could be you're married to your business. You're married to your work. You're married to whatever it is. And you've got this obsession of being needed there and they need you and this, that, and the other. And, I'm sure with Luke, like the church he was at, guess what? They're still operating and he's not there anymore in that capacity. Your business and everything else will be, but what will be different if you continue down that path is your family. And it doesn't have to be awful. Luke's telling a story where it turns out that everything's okay right now, but man, and I'm sure Luke, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm sure, you could probably say, I wish that had never happened. Right. And you've owned what you did there and what led to that. And guys, that's what we have to do. We have to own this. If you're living like Luke was living with going to bed after 1 a.m. on your tablet or your phone or your computer all the time, and your wife is just sitting there, like, I don't care if it's ministry or a bakery or, a car shop, like whatever, guess what? She's not going to want to be a part of your life that involves that because you love it more than her. And so guys, just hear that. Anytime guys talk ministry, Luke, I always like to bring it around to say, hey, listen, a lot of times you'll hear your pastor talk about stuff, but you got to understand, like, it's just real life and it's real to you too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that because, again, I don't want anyone to get the impression, because that unfortunately, there's a movement out there where let's just make the church out to be the bad guys. And I'm not saying there aren't some rotten people in the church, and there's abusive situations and things like that. It's definitely happened. But by and large, it comes down to you personally and your personal choices and personal boundaries that you set. And I like that you said for others, it's just fill in the blank, it's just for a lot of minutes their work, whatever role that takes on, whether that be ministry, church, or just working the corporate, kind of trying to go up the corporate ladder or whatever it may be in your secular job. I think all men, if they would admit, have at least had some struggle with that, of kind of getting addicted to their work. And even when I started my business at first, I got addicted to my own business, and I had to start kind of setting my own personal boundaries and even figuring out how to, because it's like, hey, I work from home. Like, I had to figure out how to cut work off and things like that. And so, I'm glad you said that it's not just church. It's not just an isolated problem to church and serving in church, although it tends to be a place where you're pretty busy. But
it's only one day of work a week. I don't know why we're so busy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's just Sundays, right? Maybe Wednesdays if you're kicking it old school.
If you're still doing that, man. But I love that, and because what we're talking about though, it really goes down to, I don't know if you said it while you were talking here or when we were off camera, but it goes down to feeding that ego that we have. We like to feel needed. We like to feel important. There's a great book out now. I haven't read it yet, but I know they've got the evaluation out there and they're doing coaching and stuff stuff on it, but it's called the 7 Primal Questions. And like, I took the test, and it's a, of course it's not clickbait, but it's a lead magnet to try to get me in on their stuff. But the test itself, it showed like my primal question was like, am I needed? Right. And so like things that I do, like go towards that. And man, you can go forever in that world of making yourself needed to people. And I've had to learn to accept, and I'm not perfect, but one thing I try to remind myself is people don't need me. They need Jesus. How can I help them understand they need Jesus more than me? And so when that's pastoring. Now in the business world, because like I told you, I do digital marketing. I just had a meeting the other day with a couple ladies about business coaching and stuff. And they're looking at me like, hey, I think you could help us. Well, man, I feel needed, but I'm sitting today and going, do I have the capacity? Do I have the time? How am I going to do this with my wife and my children? And then those are questions that we have to ask ourselves. So you're a divorced man with a daughter and co-parenting. Things are going well there. You've got your business. What did you learn from your time in that not just in the marriage, but in that season of life where you were just, pouring so much into this one area and neglecting these others? What'd you learn? What have you applied? How is your life and business now different because of your experience?
That is a loaded question because, it is one of those things where literally, I was actually just talking to somebody about this the other day in general. And I was like, literally, if, I'm 32 now, if 22-year-old me met 32-year-old me, 22-year-old me would not recognize me now. He would say, well, first of all, there's no way, your marriage is going to fail. And like, you're going to, be co-parenting a daughter and all this stuff. And there's no way you're not going to be working at this church on that side. But he'd also say something to the degree of like, there's no way you are the way you are now in terms of the disciplines that I've put into my life. And, kind of the way I've completely restructured and just changed in a very positive way. I don't live, because then I was living just high stress life. And again, stress that you kind of just get addicted to. And, so not just the idea of and now, like I said, though, not to say I don't have stuff happen from time to time that, makes me, more stressed or whatever, but I live a pretty, a stress-free life because I've structured it that way. And like I said, a more disciplined life. I didn't really have any discipline back in the day.
What are some of those disciplines that you've put in place that have helped you establish the structure and stress-free life? Yeah,
well, the number one thing I always start with is I implemented an early wake-up time for probably a year or two after I started my own business, because you start your own business and you're like, hey, man, this is awesome. I get to, wake up when I want and whatever. And I realized real quick that wasn't going to work long term.
No.
And so that's one of the things is an early wake up time, making my health and exercise, what I eat, making that a priority. That's honestly something I'm very late to the game on, just the past probably 2 or 3 years that I've really started to take that seriously. And so that alone, cause man, when I was 20, like I said, 21, 22, I could put down the sodas, the Dr. Peppers, all the stuff. And now it's like, I'm not touching that stuff, No.
What was your soda of choice?
It probably was Dr. Pepper back in the day.
Really? Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, Dr. Pepper, that was probably the main one. And hey, I'll be honest with you, I just do the 0 sugar Dr. Pepper now. I don't do it all the time, but hey, I'm a human. Okay, every now, I gotta have something. Yeah.
Coke was mine. I would have 2, usually 2 minimum a day, right? If not more. And man, I think it was 2016. We had our first kindergarten graduation for the academy we had started in Yuma, and I saw the video of myself, and I was like, that's not good. That does not look like the Marine I was like a year ago. This isn't good. We got to work on that. And so I cut Coke out, but that was the one for me, man. And it changes you. It's huge. Taking your health as a priority. It's an act of stewardship, really, to the Lord and worship when you do that. And so that's one of the disciplines that's there. The eating, the early wake up. What are some others?
One of the things is I do try to prioritize my mornings in general, not just, like I said, the early wake up, but, it's usually I try to wake up early, hit the gym, and then I try to block everything, for the rest of the day, in terms of, as far as I don't take meetings before noon, typically. And I mean, sometimes I'll make exception. Don't take meetings or calls. I just use just about every morning of every weekday that is blocked off to actually focus and get work done. And the beauty of that, I didn't get to this overnight. I've gotten in time is now I'm finding myself to where most days I'm kind of done with work at noon. I might have a call, might have, a podcast interview like this, or some type of coaching call or work related call that's scheduled for the afternoon. But, for the most part, some exception, like that's kind of where I'm at now. And so, that was another thing, I guess, call it time blocking, whatever. There's more fancy ways to do it. And people that, I've heard of the ideal wake. I've experimented with that from Michael Hyatt and whatnot. And that's all great. Yeah. But for me, it was just very simple. Like, the mornings is to get work done. The afternoons is to have, again, have meetings, calls, everything, because I'm more focused, I'm more productive in the morning, making the most of it. So, again, it's nothing revolutionary. It's just some simple tweaks and adjustments there to kind of how I was operating.
I read Carey Nieuwhof's At Your Best. I don't know if you've read that one yet, but he talks about the red, yellow, and green zones. And I'm like you, man, like 7 to 11, I am just... let's go. I'm productive. I can do some deep thinking, get my studying done, some strategizing. 12 o'clock and on, 12 to about 3:30 or 4, I'm all right, but I probably shouldn't be doing a lot of deep thinking and stuff. It's actually very difficult for me to do that. I've tried it. It doesn't work. And then like 4 to 6 is my red zone. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be around anyone. Just leave me alone, right? Give me my 4 to 6 time. I'm going to go and just, I don't know, stare at a wall, because that's about how nice. Good I am at doing anything. Then after 6, I kind of get my last win before it's time for bed. But so that's my line. I'm with you, man. Blocking off that morning, that's so huge. And as you're saying this, I'm starting to think like, I actually have meetings scheduled in the mornings. I need to move those around. And so I'm going to make some adjustments after this podcast. So I appreciate that, man. We talked about your business, but I don't think we've mentioned the name of it. What is the name of your business? And then talk about your podcast too, because you got one of those going.
Yeah, absolutely. So my business, Must Increase Media, that is pulled from John 3:30. He must increase, I must decrease. And so that's the name of my that's the business name. Now, I do have for churches, I have more or less I call it a product line or specific service branded under something called Church Media HQ. And that's just to kind of make it a little bit more specific to churches there. But yeah, the podcast is the Must Increase podcast. Again, that's on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, all the places. And really the podcast, I have this overall vision, if you will, for the businesses where we just want to increase truth and inspire hope. That's really the simple aspect of it. Over the years, we've experimented with, obviously the bulk of what we're doing right now and what I'm doing is church related, church websites, church graphics, even some church video and podcasts, helping churches with that. But in the past, I've also, and I'm maybe hoping to get back to this sometime in the future. It just hasn't made a lot of sense for the stage I'm in now, but I've made things like short films, kind of experimented in that world a little bit. Really what it comes down to is what I want to do is I want to lead people and help them by creating essentially positive content. And so that's kind of where the podcast focuses more is, yes, it's still very practical for a church leader and a pastor. But even if you're just, even if you're looking to lead your family, because I'm trying to help you with not just churches and their marketing and media, but also I like to speak to consumer tech. I'm doing movie reviews and TV show reviews on there pretty often, just because I like it, but also because, hey, I want to help you out. I want to, maybe I'll go suffer through the movie so you don't have to type of situation. Or, as a parent, hey, here's some stuff you're going to watch out for, because as we know nowadays, even kids programming is going to slip in the ideology and the agenda and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And so well, then go ahead and just give me your quick 30-second review. Barbie, how was it? Did you jump on that or?
Okay, so I haven't seen it yet. First of all, my daughter's mom did take my daughter, and she took, but I wouldn't. And I would say my daughter's mom, she didn't know any better. She just thought, just like everybody, that it was just hey, it's a movie about Barbie, you know. But Barbie. It turns out, from what I'm hearing, from what Ben Shapiro has told me,
oh Lord,
that it's actually got quite the bend on it. So I don't, I'm not going to take my daughter to see it, especially because you're already seen it, because I wouldn't do it anyway. And this is just one of those movies, like, I'm not going to go see it by myself, which I will. Any other movie I'll see, but I'm not going to go see the Barbie movie by myself. And I'm, and so that's the reason I haven't seen it yet. It's because it's like I got to find someone to go with, maybe the right type of person to go with. So I don't have a review on it as of yet.
I would have been shocked if you did. I would have been shocked if you did.
I really do want to figure out a way to see it just so I can review it, but I just haven't figured out how to make that happen yet.
I will wait for it to come to streaming devices or something.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
That's awesome. So your company does graphic design and different things, a lot of the digital marketing space, really geared toward churches. Happy to work with other companies, but you really just target churches for that. And then your podcast, you said you talk about just kind of a positive spin on different things like that. If our guys were to tune in, like, what's some things that they could expect? You mentioned the movie reviews, TV reviews. Do you ever do interviews? And like, what kind of value and stuff could they grab from listening to your podcast that we are going to have in our show notes, guys? So make sure to go give Luke a follow over there and subscribe.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man.
So we're kind of divide things up into maybe 3 or 4 different categories. So again, the first thing is going to be, I'm trying to at least monthly do a recap of reviews of movies and TV shows. I'm not always able to do that every month, but I try to. It just depends on how much time I have to get to the movie theater, to be honest. So there's that. The second thing is, we still like to have about at least once a month, because it's a weekly episode. We'd still like to once a month have a focus on actually churches and church leaders. So that might look like sometimes it's an interview with somebody in the church world, a pastor, church leader, assistant pastor, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's a coaching session that I've done, just kind of taking the recording of that and putting it on the podcast. And so we're trying to focus on that. And then, like I said, kind of the third category is going to be talking about consumer tech. So like, for example, we're coming up soon on a new iPhone. And so I'll probably do an episode dedicated to talking about, hey, do you really need to buy it? Here's what's new. The camera's better. Okay. Well, big shocker. So things like that. I do a lot of stuff on Apple because I am an Apple guy, Mac, iPad, iPhone.
Well, I knew there was something I liked about you, so that's all right.
Yeah. See, we can get on the same page with some areas. Maybe not football, but
not
Apple,
football.
So that, and then maybe just more general, kind of the fourth category would be more general marketing and media and things like that. And really what I'm hoping to maybe one day be more into business too. Helping people talk through, like, hey, starting a business, how to market it and all these things. So something that maybe a pastor would still appreciate, but even if you're just looking to, maybe start a side hustle, or you're in the corporate world, I think you could still glean something from it. So kind of through those 4 categories, we're trying to reach a broad audience while also being somewhat specific in the type of content we're covering.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah. So you're speaking my language. I think most of the guys on here have heard by now. I am a pastor. I'm also have a digital marketing company, and I work with coaching and different things like that. And so I'm definitely in that space. Love that. One of the more interesting reads I've had in the last few weeks by audiobook for this one, and then I'm reading his actual hard copy book, Donald Miller with Story Brand. Have you read that? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Man. Yeah. I love that. And then I'm reading Business Made Simple right now, the 60-day daily reader he's got. And then I just listened to 10X by Grant Cardone. And boy, let me tell you, that was dangerous for a person like me, because that was wonderful, right? And one of the things I think is interesting, and I want to bring up, because you understand, have you read that, heard about that, his 10X
I've heard of Grant Cardone. I've not read that book though, no.
Okay, great. So, it's ultimately just like, hey, whatever your goals are, 10X them. And then whatever effort you think it's going to take to achieve them, 10X them, right? 10 times them. And I'm like, okay, cool. I see what you're doing there. I see what you're talking about. And obviously hustle, grind, get it done. What's interesting is when you listen to the book, and you get later into it, and he starts talking about family life and his wife and his daughters and stuff. You actually hear him talking about investing that time and stuff with them and things, because when I first heard of it, and of course the hustle and grind of, that Grant Cardone's kind of known for, you're thinking like, okay, that's not sustainable long term. You're gonna have to take care of your family and things like that. And so but listening to the book, he really kind of helps lay that out of like, hey, don't forget, I want my daughters to see this and do this, but it's not an excuse to be lazy,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think I agree with that. And honestly, I'm like, I don't know if he knows it or not, but I think he's teaching a biblical principle here, because the last time I checked, Daniel was 10 times better than all those that were around him, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, hey, we could really, pick a couple words and preach a series on that if we wanted to. But yeah, man. So I've just, those are some of my favorites that I've read right now. But if our guys are listening and they own a business or they want to do some marketing or something like that, like what's a book, what's some recommendation you might give them? Like, hey, go grab this. This was impactful for me.
Yeah. So you mentioned StoryBrand. That is good. Business Made Simple is also very good. Donald Miller in general he's written quite a few books at this point about business and marketing. And now I will tell you, Dustin, I'm more of a podcast guy than a book guy.
Yeah. Okay.
And
well,
so,
then give us some podcast recommendations.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't claim to have a ton of book. I try to, and I'm an all audiobook guy. I can't. It's been a while since I actually opened a book and physically read it, if I'm just completely honest.
That's all right.
Here.
That's all right.
But yeah, so as far as podcast, again, going back to Donald Miller, of course, his stuff is really good, even his podcast.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's a new recommendation for your audience, but the Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast is just, to me, the best out there. He only puts out one episode a month, but I find myself re-listening to his stuff all the time. And speaking of books, he did put out I believe it was the Leading Like It Matters here about a year ago. That was a really good book. Even if it is tailored for church leaders, but there's a lot of stuff in there you can apply to just business in general.
Yeah, and his podcast does a great job at not just applying to church leaders, but really broad spectrum. He just had Maxwell on recently. Man, that was a good one.
Yep. Yeah, and he really is probably the single greatest influence on my leadership philosophy, and just the idea of finding people, developing people, empowering leaders, and I think he's the master of communicating it as well as demonstrating it. So, so that's always good. I'm trying to think of any other that's coming to the top of my head here. Andy Stanley's.
Oh,
Andy Stanley's got his leadership podcast is good as well. Yeah. So that's a good one as well.
Anytime I mention Andy Stanley, I always tell people like, hey, look, we may not agree on everything. All right. Theologically, but he's got some great leadership stuff. So throw out the bones you don't like and take the meat because it's there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
What, let's see, we were talking about the podcast and marketing. Have you listened to Marketing Made Simple?
The podcast?
Yeah.
Yes, I have. I've not been keeping up with as much lately, to be honest with you. Yeah. I kind of just stick with, because they've got the Business Made Simple, the one that's Donald Miller actually hosts now. Right, so that's the one that I keep up with regularly. I will kind of check in on Marketing Made Simple every once in a while, but I'm finding that if you were with the Business Made Simple podcast was the StoryBrand podcast, and they changed it in the past probably 2 years. And so what I'm finding is Marketing Made Simple is revisiting a lot of the stuff that they talked about early on in the StoryBrand podcast. So it's kind of like, well, sense. I've heard a lot of this, so I'm not as engaged and compelled by it. But it does have some. If you're new to the StoryBrand concept, yes, you need to get onto the Marketing Made Simple podcast.
Okay, I love that. That's awesome, man. That's good. We were talking beforehand because we've got our founding members, and Luke, I think I told you a bit about them, but we've got a founding member option right now for the first 6 months of our podcast launch, because we launched Father's Day this year. So up until the December 31st of 2023, we're offering a founding members package. And it's for anybody who wants to subscribe to that, you can go to patreon.com/menaftergod. $833 a month for 12 months, total of $99.96 in a year. And what our founding members are able to get is a free piece of merchandise from our store, their choice, 10% lifetime discount on anything Men After God produces. They get exclusive content with just about every episode. And then they also get 4 coaching calls with me on a topic of their choice if they'd like to take advantage of that. And then they also get, they've got a finance coach they can call, a relationship coach they can call, and a training and nutrition coach that they can get on a call with that will provide them with a deliverable and something that they can actually take and apply right then and there. And then let's see, shout outs on our podcast and our Facebook page and our presence on our website, just forever, being founding members of this. And again, they could do that, patreon.com/menaftergod. Guys, if you're listening, I would love for you to take advantage of that while we've got it open. It will close at the end of December, and we'll still have Patreon, we'll still have a subscription, but it is not going to be as robust as our founding members package. So everyone that joins right now is a founding member, and we're going to shoot 15 to 18 minutes worth of content here in just a minute. And remind me, because we were talking about a couple different things. What kind of direction do you want to go with that? What are you going to bring to our founding members for that recording?
Yeah, so I think I'd like to, and we were saying this beforehand, we'd probably just be able to scratch the surface, but I would like to introduce this concept of no matter where you're at, you can be an entrepreneur, and you can use that to, if nothing else, potentially give you some supplemental income, but also maybe even potentially to have full-time level income on part-time level work. Now, you don't get there overnight, but there's some simple things that I think can be done as far as your mindset that I think will help you maybe get to that point. Someday. I mean, imagine this. I imagine a world where maybe the full-time, those in what we would call full-time ministry, maybe they don't have to be fully funded by their church. Maybe they can figure out a way to fund themselves, essentially, again, on maybe just a few hours a week, so that they can then commit themselves and dedicate themselves to actually serving their church with no financial strings attached.
So there's a church planning model out there that's being utilized by it's utilized at least once inside of a network, and I know they're exploring utilizing it more, but it's basically establishing a business first that becomes profitable to support the church that operates in or around the business. Coffee shops are popular. I know of one in Massachusetts. There's a coffee shop in a mall, and it supports the ministry that's there. And now there's less of a burden there on people to support and grow the church financially. But what you're talking about, man, that's a biblical concept. I mean, Paul was a tent maker, and he didn't want to rely upon the donations of the people and stuff. And so nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of guys that their marketable skills may not be in the place of being able to do that. But there's some guys out there, especially younger guys, that have the energy and they can put in the effort, that can discover marketable skills and definitely get there. But that mindset thing, I can't wait to explore that with you, because it is a huge mindset shift going from, well, I have to work hard 40 hours plus a week in order to make a livable wage and all this stuff. But when you learn and honestly, I'm going to say just a few different ways of thinking, you can really change your life and lifestyle and how you approach work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's something, again, I've kind of had to learn it the hard way, maybe. And it's everything is hard work. There's nothing comes easy, nothing worth it, at least. And so, it's definitely a topic I'm interested in exploring and figuring out more about myself, even.
Yeah, I love that, man. Look, bro, you've been so open and transparent and vulnerable with us. And I know our audience is going to get so much value from listening to this today. And so, guys that are listening, Luke has shared a story where he did, what many of us can do. And honestly, he, at that age and that season of life he was in, like, that is the reason Men After God exists. We want to partner with men and come alongside you so that you don't have to experience exactly what Luke experienced. We want to help you achieve that success with a thriving faith and family. It's why our coaching program of Becoming a Man After God, we teach you a framework to set boundaries in your life and say no to some things that may be important, but they're not the most important things, like your relationship with Christ and your family. And so it's great to hear that Luke, even through his experience, never lost his faith. But there's too many stories of guys out there, and maybe you're a guy going through this right now where your faith is just rocky and you don't know if you're going to be able to continue to be a follower of Jesus. Maybe you're blaming Jesus in the church. Like, I encourage you, please reach out to us. Connect with us on Facebook and let's talk and let's see that there's some personal responsibility there, and there is a way to live for Jesus that doesn't have you working 17, 20 plus hours a day, right?
Yeah,
so Luke,
absolutely.
Luke, thanks for your time, man. Do me a favor, because I don't think I got it while we were talking through it all. We got the name of your business. How can our guys contact you if they would like to? And then again, highlight your podcast again and just talk just a couple minutes on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast is the Must Increase podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's also, we have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Must Increase. And if you really just want to kind of find everything, I should probably just send you to mustincrease.com, because that's going to have links to the podcast, also to what I do for churches and everything there. And you can, though, I will say, if you want to contact me directly, my email is luke@mustincrease.com. And if you just have a question about anything, business, life, if you're going through something like what I've been through, I'm here for you. I'd love to communicate with you. So those are the ways to get in touch.
I appreciate that, brother. Appreciate that. And if you don't mind, I'd love to get you in our community online. Again, facebook.com/group/men after God, for men like yourself. And then some of our coaches and other guys we've interviewed, they're all in there. And so if you've got a question, if you got something you're going through, guys, we're here. Just shot a video the other day for a little short reel about self-reliance. Like, none of us are self-reliant. We think we are, but we've actually got a great group of people around us, and that's what the community is there for. And so, Luke, thanks for your time today, man. I'm excited to record for our founding members, and to our audience, guys, thanks for listening. I'm just amazed at how many of you are just enjoying and taking value from our content. We hope it's a blessing to you, because we believe that every Christian man deserves the opportunity to achieve success with a thriving faith and family, and we are happy to partner with you on your journey to do just that. And so we will catch you next week with a brand new podcast with brand new content. And in between them, we'll connect with you online. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Men After God podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep up with the show by following us at facebook.com/Men After God. You can also reach out to Dustin personally at Dustin@seekconsulting.us with any questions or for coaching on being a man after God. Until next time.